with whatever's on my mind, whatever's in my heart, however I'm doing, right? Mm-hmm. And I touch these foods and I work with these foods. And then I take these foods and I bring them to somewhere, and I bring them somewhere and I serve them to somebody, and people consume these foods. And you're taking this thing and you're putting it inside of yourself, and it's going to literally become your body. Mm-hmm. I don't know of a more intimate contract with people. And it's so interesting. It's a thing we never talk about.
We're bringing healthy back. Them other bros don't know about the facts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magic of Metabolic Health podcast, episode 27, where optimized metabolic health is our goal, and we are here to get you there. My name is Amelia Wood, and I am a food-first personal trainer and metabolic health coach. And my co-host, Dr. Fomi, is out of the studio today, but we have a very special guest from the Pacific Northwest, Chef Jason Vickers. Hey, Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Fabulous. So excited for this conversation. You are our first chef, I believe, on the podcast. So super excited because I'm a food first personal trainer and I have lots of questions for you. So if you're not familiar with the podcast, the Magic of Metabolic Health is all about building a village, right? We really value community here, and we want to make sure that this village encompasses every part of who we are, right? We release guilt, shame, the quest for perfection, and we really demonstrate how knowing your why and building self-efficacy is super important to optimizing your metabolic health and, of course, your happiness, right? So we focus a lot on behavior change, and that's one of my certifications. I'm a behavior change specialist. It sounds kind of funny, but basically, you know, if I don't understand or grasp really well how to talk to people, then they're not going to succeed if I'm, you know, their coach or their trainer. So we'll probably get into a little bit of that today too, but basically we're just here to have a nice conversation and support our community, and more information, more wisdom, more knowledge about holistic health, metabolic health, and today, food. So Jason, I'll start with your bio.
Okay.
Ohomous Nut Annokinam, also painting owl, is from the Hassanamisco tribe of the Nipmuc Nation. Born in his ancestral home of Worcester, Massachusetts.
Say that.
Or Worcester, but that's totally wrong.
Worcester,
Mass. Jason comes from two big families, his mother's Italian heritage, as well as his father's Indigenous roots, based right there on the literal ground they lived on. The family moved to Seattle, where Jason came of age in and around Seattle's ever-growing restaurant scene around Pike Place Market. And he saw the world of the farmer, the forager, and the fisherman come alive every day on his way to school. As soon as he was able, Jason dove into this world, working around many of downtown Seattle's most notable and award-winning hotels and restaurants. After years of studying, cooking, serving, teaching, and writing about cuisines of the world, Jason realized he was able to interact in this way with foods from everywhere, but his own ancestral homelands. Mm. With that thought in mind, he spent recent years applying his skill and ability to the incredible bounty of traditional foods that Native country has to offer. This path has been carefully chosen and guided by aunties, generous uncles, elders, and lots of wonderful and supportive relatives, happy to see the old foods and some of the old ways, as well as new ways, brought to life through his work. Jason believes it is as much a pleasure as it is an honor to share these foods and ways in our communities today. Natoncks Metsu, which means feeding my cousins, is both the name of Jason's business and the very heart of his mission. And we're going to learn all about it today. So, Jason, we are here now in the Pacific Northwest, and we met at University of Washington.
We sure did.
At the Living Breath Indigenous Food Symposium. I don't know what year that was.
I think this year was our third year there, which means we got to hang out for the third time at the Living Breath Symposium. So yeah, we met there Yeah, we met there a couple of years back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're a big forager. I'm a big forager. So we've talked about that. I've seen some awesome photos of you gathering nettles and all the lovely things to include in your menu. So we'll get into your menu and your philosophy and everything. But one of the things that we always ask our guests right off the bat is a little bit about your history growing up, right? Our metabolic health, our mental health, everything's influenced to a certain degree from our childhood. And so we would love to know, where did you grow up? I mean, we know Massachusetts, but how did you grow up? Like, what kind of food did you eat during your childhood? What kind of food did your family value?
I'll tell you that we moved here when I was quite young. We moved here. First of all, thank you for having me. It's really wonderful to be here. Yes, Kutubadamish, which means I thank you from the bottom of my heart for hosting this conversation. It's really a joy and a pleasure to hang with you and to talk like this. I We moved here when I was about 6 years old. And when we moved here, we were like many indigenous urban families. We didn't have a lot of resources. You know, we didn't have there wasn't a lot of money going around. And when we moved to the Seattle area in 1977. One of the first things my father did was took me down to the beach. We dug up some clams, and every clam we popped out of a shell and put on a hook and cast out into the water, we caught a rock cod. And for the first couple of years, we ate a lot of fish and we ate a lot of food from that beach. And I thought that we really, really had it going on because of the food, that stuff. It was just so exotic and like really exciting to me to be able to live that way. It wasn't until later I realized that we were really, we were sort of sustenance living in that way. And interestingly enough, one of the first things my father did was he began collecting those bones and burying them out in the yard. And in that same spot that he buried them, he ended up taking care of that little plot of land, and it became a garden. And now this wasn't a thing. My father didn't come from. My father was very, very urban person from a very urban situation in Worcester, and he didn't come from some sort of a rich gardening background. I think that my father was really kind of responding to something in his DNA when it came to taking care of us as kids, and that's kind of where that stuff came from. And I, being a young kid with the appetites that I had, I was known for picking a few peas off the vine or eating a little cucumber over here, or and I mean, my family will laugh and tell you that they really caught me eating all kinds of things out of the garden. They caught me eating an onion, or they caught me eating a potato, and because I wasn't the most patient kid, but I was definitely a hungry kid, and in that respect, I learned a lot of those things really young, and I was given the gift of whole foods like that from a young age. We went through another era of sort of like the rest of my childhood and early adolescence, where my food habits had kind of shifted around, and I definitely had a sort of an inner city youth's diet in large part growing up. When I came into young adulthood and really began to embrace working at, like when I was 16, 17 years old, and started working in restaurants and seeing what was happening and seeing what people were putting together there with foods. I really leaned into that. I was a person who, I watched a lot of people around me who cooked, and they would go home and make themselves, because they had spent so much time cooking all day, they would go home and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or macaroni and cheese. Mm-hmm. And I was a person who, I was so excited about what I was learning. Whether it was the foods, whether it was seasonings and spices, whether it was sort of, each of these things to me was sort of like learning what cumin was, and what cumin was to the foods of like Central and South America, or to the foods of Asia. I would go home and I would geek out about it. I would cook, I'd try everything, because to me, I sort of cracked some incredible code, so I wanted to go home and sort of try everything along those lines. And I will say that that really changed and adjusted and sort of improved my diet. So those things were always woven into my diet. It wasn't until relatively recently, in the last few years, that I have really put attention and real intention into being really mindful about what I'm putting into my body. And I'm grateful for that. And it has really influenced my health and and not only my health, but but what I turn around and put into the food that I produce and create too. So, it's a mixed bag. I definitely grew up as an inner city kid, but have been fortunate as an adult to go through a whole bunch of processes, and I mean in a holistic way. And I guess full disclosure will be, as happens oftentimes to Indigenous folks, as happens oftentimes to urban natives, as happens oftentimes to men and women who work in the hospitality industry. I had a very difficult walk through addiction and substance use disorder as well. So for me, this journey back into health, this journey back into working with traditional foods, this journey back into trying to share some of these things around is definitely driven by this desire to come back into the world in a good way. And not only regenerate, but to be mindful of like putting something good into the world for the generations to come. We often talk about things like thinking in terms of the next 7 generations. So to really sit down and think, what does that mean to me? What am I sort of putting into the basket now that I've I've received so much from it in life. So with that thought in mind, I have really tried over these last few years to be mindful of what I'm doing and how I do it. So. So when I had the opportunity to go into business as for myself, I grew up in restaurants. I had been a chef and a caterer and a private chef and all of these things for many, many years. But this time they were sort of all woven together. It was sort of like health and walking this red road and really like healing. And part of that for me was kind of always going to be about food as well.
Yeah.
Just because it's a language I speak. I watched my dad grow up and there were certain things he could just do with his hands that just made sense. Like the way he works with wood it's like a language he speaks. My father was kind of a Renaissance person, or is, I should say, a Renaissance person who has the ability to touch and do all these different things, and they just make sense to him. And for me, when I started working with food, it was sort of just another language that I can speak, by making things.
Yeah. That really resonates with me because I've traveled a lot, and I realized in my early 20s, I was in West Africa and I didn't speak the languages there.
Yeah.
And yet I was able to bond mostly with the women because they were the ones cooking for the most part in this way that was solely based off of the food prep. I couldn't tell them how to say fish or how much of this or how much of that. And they would tell me, and of course I'm like, I don't understand. And so they would show me, and we would spend hours and hours in the kitchen. And it really transformed, I don't know, my understanding of culture and cultural differences that, even if you don't speak the tongue, right? You do speak the same language because we all have to eat and we all want to eat and we all enjoy good food. And so it's really interesting that you have been able to see and feel and experience that from such a young age, really, it sounds like, with your dad gardening. And my mom gardened a bit for sure, but my grandparents were big gardeners and my great grandparents were farmers. And so, I don't know if it's genetic or if it was just environmental, right? Like I just saw that and I was like, I want to grow a cabbage. That's amazing. I want to pull a carrot out of the ground, rinse it off and eat it.
It's exciting, man. Yeah. Like to see the sprout and then a few weeks later, like see the radish and you're like, look at this thing. This has been happening this whole time under there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really powerful. And I'm also a master gardener, so I work with youth as well, educating them how to grow from seed and also understand native plants and things like that. And so I know that you've done a lot of different work and service with different age groups. So, you're a professional caterer, so, adults are going to hire you for adult things, but I'm curious how you engage with kids and what kind of opportunities you have in your business to do that.
I often get to connect and engage with young people, whether it's through sharing my experience and telling stories, or every now and then I'm given the opportunity to work with a group of kids, a group of families, maybe out in some of the parks in the Seattle area and some of the surrounding forests. One of the most powerful things for me, and it's mentioned in that bio there, is like spending time with folks. My brother Mark Colson, and a handful of other people really took some intentional time and took a lot of long walks out in the forest with me, and started telling me stories and sharing with me about these things. And I'll tell you, I came back to one of the beautiful things about Seattle is like we have places like Seward Park, Discovery Park, these places with these huge, incredible, sort of uninterrupted green spaces. And I'd spent a lot of time in those places during my childhood and during my adulthood. To come back to those same places after having so much shared with me. And it wasn't just the park. It wasn't just the woods. Now it's this sort of unbelievable breadbasket of things, one of the most exciting opportunities I've been given as a chef, is, to grow up learning how to touch food and learning how to take care of things in this particular way. And then mid stride in my career, being given this opportunity to experience a whole new universe of plants, and roots and medicines. And I mean, and each one comes with a story. Each one comes with, with its own relevance. Each one comes with these beautiful long roots of history that go way back into time, and being able to get this sort of fresh wave of stuff right in the middle. It's kind of like, the first era of my chef's career was like kind of learning what to do with these, you know what I mean? And this era has been like, okay, well, now that we see that you're fit to work with these, we're going to give you some interesting and some important things and turn you loose and let you, you know what I mean? Like use these same hands to touch some traditional things and kind of love on them in a traditional way. Also to use your sensibilities and what you've learned to take some of these things and interpret them in modern ways too.
Sure.
So I say that so taking the energy from having that kind of an experience and sharing it with kids, sharing it with I'll be going in about a week. I'll be going to Seattle Central College. One of my old colleagues is now one of the directors there for their culinary program, and I'll get to sit and share with a group of Indigenous students about culinary students about some of this stuff, which is great. Yeah, it's I'm really grateful to be in a stage of this work where I can hold conversations with people and kind of talk about some of these ideas, because if we're doing these things in a good way, one of the most important things to remember is, I have this, the cedar that I wear here, and the cedar that it's in the symbol of Natoncks Metsu. It represents generosity. And what I mean by that is, as a chef who has been at it, and active for about 30 years, I realize as all this information is being given to me by folks that I don't own it. You know what I mean? I'm not here to like put it all in my knapsack, say thank you very much, and sort of walk off into the sunset. I'm responsible for sharing it. Folks have gone to the effort and expended energy to share these things with me, and I'm really grateful to have them. So every chance I get to share them around, whether it's to kids or anybody, and young native cooks who are interested in not only like trying to reconnect, but to reconnect to food. And I realize, and I've especially been doing a lot of work on this lately. It's not just the sharing of that information, but it's walking this stuff out in a good way, Yeah, it's not just what you share, but it's how I work with folks,
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine that how you share inspires young, youth, native youth, and anybody to see what's possible, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't go to France and go to culinary school and do all the things, that some people might think you need to do in order to be a successful chef.
I will tell you. Yep, that's right.
So how did you claim yourself as a chef? Because I'm sure there's a ton of people who would love to be a chef, but they see the traditional route and they're like, oh, I can't do that, or, whatever.
I actually did. I didn't go to culinary school. I used to say I paid attention like a lot of folks paid tuition, and I realized I used to say that when I was in my 20s and kind of arrogant, and like how youth is youth, and we know a little bit about that. But I started as a dishwasher at 17, and I really did just pay attention and started asking lots of questions, and was blessed with a handful of really incredible mentors. I had an Italian chef named Luigi Ruggiero. I worked with this Mexican and Basque chef named Jose Luis Ugalde, and then finally worked with a woman named Tamara Murphy in the Pike Place Market at a handful of like really incredible restaurants. And these folks along the way, they were tough teachers. They were very, they had come from a place where it was just as customary for young cooks to apprentice as it was for, say, folks to go to school. And so I grew up, under the guidance of folks like this. And at one point I stepped away from the restaurant world and went to Caterer, and just to sort of like try a facet of this world of food. And, and that led to so many more things. So I'm grateful that my foundation was in restaurants. My foundation was in a place where like we washed dishes and we worked really hard. And I was grateful to get the opportunity. The chef would look around and say, hey, listen, if you really bust your butt and you really like do this work, I'll give you some prep to do. And to me, that was like the carrot. And I was like, okay. So then it was like, then they'd hand me a case of garlic, a big old box. And he'd say, okay, go ahead and cut the garlic. And I cut the garlic till the acidity of the garlic had kind of like, I would wear my hands raw. You know what I mean? Or like cut a case of onions and like, till you're a mess, from cutting onions. But I learned that way, and I was grateful to do it, and I made all my little mistakes along the way, learned how to be mindful with a knife so as not to sort of to hurt yourself, or how to move in kitchens, or how to, and all of those things. So I'm grateful that I had kind of a long, slow education of it that way. And I didn't refer to myself as a chef until many, many years later, when I was the person responsible for showing folks that this is a thing I did. And then every aspect of it along the way, I'm responsible for sitting down and walking out with these people, what they want to do. Like what kind of an event do you want to have? What kind of food do you want to have? I want to know a little bit about you and a little bit about who you are, and turn that into, and interpret that in food and take it and then ultimately sort of share it with somebody. And coming all the way full circle to doing this work in sort of a modern Indigenous way that's influenced by culture and tradition. It involves a lot, and and I'm grateful for that. Not every single event that we do is a sort of like incredible journey of like some of them are quite simple, and I'm grateful for that. But every now and then we get a special. And we just did a wedding in Cleellum on the other side of the mountains a couple of weeks ago for this wonderful Ojibwe couple. And we really got to sit down and take some time and be really, really intentional with traditional foods from their culture, traditional foods from the Pacific Northwest, where they had lived and thrived. And we were able to, we made this beautiful brunch for them, with lots of braised bison and this beautiful sort of like Pacific Northwest influenced salmon hash, and and each one of the elements came from it's like driving up to Tulalip to buy the fish, from the fisherman off the pier, and shout out to my brother Scotty. And going out to gather these things personally and taking them back to the kitchen and like touching these foods and taking care of them with the crew. We also got to do for this event, they did this brunch in the morning, and then in the afternoon they did a grazing table, which to us is this golden opportunity, for us to practice like this thing that I'm really, really excited about lately is Indigenous charcuterie. Right?
I saw those photos.
Oh my God, it's so cool. Listen, I'll get fired up right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I will actually send you. I'll send you an image in case you're interested in sort of sharing it around with the information about what we're doing now. But so to be able to take little bits of these precious things from all over, Turtle Island, all over Indian country, and take them and kind of interpret them. So we got some really incredible fish, again, smoked up in Marysville from my brother Scotty, and we got these, we got some really, really incredible deer and elk salamis and jerkies, and got to work with those, and a whole bunch of we went out and foraged and pickled some things ourselves. I got to shop with my friend Melissa Meyer down at Rose Island Farm down in Puyallup territory, and gather up some really lovely fresh and preserved things from her. So it's not just the creation of the menu, it's sort of taking a walk around and spending some time with people, being social with people, and hanging out and kind of talking a little bit about what they offer and how to interpret that, to folks is a really rich way to take care of people. Yeah. And I'll tell you that at 17, when I was a dishwasher, I wouldn't have imagined that it could be like this. Right. I've traveled around the world doing some cooking, and I've worked for some really interesting folks. But I will say that like doing this kind of thing in this kind of way right now is far and away my favorite way to express. You know what I mean? It's because I get to be a conduit. You know, I get to be like what the medicine person calls a hollow bone. You know, I get this stuff kind of passes through us and goes out to folks. And I guess I'll say it here. This is a thing that's on my mind, and I say it with folks often is we as people who handle food make kind of a sacred contract with people. And what I mean by that is like I gather up these foods and then I come into the kitchen with whatever's on my mind, whatever's in my heart, however I'm doing, right? And I touch these foods and I work with these foods. And then I take these foods and I bring them to somewhere, and I bring them somewhere and I serve them to somebody, and people consume these foods. And you're taking this thing and you're putting it inside of yourself, and it's going to literally become your body. I don't know of a more intimate contract with people. And it's so interesting. It's a thing we never talk about, you know, and it makes the idea of pulling up to the drive-through and grabbing a burger, you know, or it seem almost like it seemed, you know, not to say I haven't spent, you know, plenty, you know, I've done things like that plenty of times in my life, but like living and walking in this philosophy has just opened the door to how rich it is to be on this side of things and to be able to do that way. So to be able to be in this circle with people, and it goes from there. And then then it moves into things like I'm responsible for taking good care of myself. I'm responsible for being a good leader to the folks that I work with. And those things are, and so this all circles back to this question about calling oneself a chef, because I now have a group of young Indigenous folks who are looking at me to be a good leader, to be a consistent leader. And I spent so much time. I grew up in restaurants, catered a lot, done a lot of those things. For many years, I did this by myself.
Yeah.
You know, so now having a group of people that I'm responsible for working with and sharing this information with, but not only that, like, but to, you know, showing up to the kitchen in kind of an even and balanced way. And, you know, and kind of, you know, making sure like we keep our energy up and we move through what we're doing in a good way. They are a lot of asks, and there are a lot of those things that there are a lot of lessons in that. So I guess what I'm saying is I have been given the gift of a holistic lifestyle that kind of starts from doing that and expands outward. You know, this work that I do, like so working with purpose is really working with purpose. You know, it's not just how you're touching the food. It's who are you as you do this. You know, who am I to myself before I come to the kitchen, and then who am I in the kitchen? And then who am I with my guests and clients?
Yeah, it's a sacred process. And I didn't really learn about that until I started going to ceremony regularly.
That's right.
And we were reminded that when you're preparing food for your relatives, especially in a ceremony setting, your energy transfers directly into the food that you're feeding.
That's right.
And it's not, it's literal. It's not some woo-woo stuff and like,
that's right,
hippie, whatever, weird, primitive, blah, blah, blah. Like this, I'm sure it's been scientifically proven somewhere, but I don't care because
anybody's grandma will tell you, don't cook angry.
Yeah.
Hey, don't cook angry. Yeah.
Yeah. And and for women, certain groups, certain traditions, we're encouraged not to cook on our time.
That's right.
And that was really hard for me to understand for a long time because in this modern world, right? Like I don't have time to sit down and not cook.
Right.
Right. So we don't have to get into that, but I just wanted to mention that, this awareness is really just honoring our gifts.
That's right.
Right. You have this gift of feeding the people, feeding your cousins. Yeah. And I also love to cook. I am nowhere close to being a chef, but I do cooking classes for folks, usually in senior centers, just because that's where they have the demand. But it's such an honor. And it's also, it feels so good to see people's eyes when you show them something And like I make nasturtium pesto and I call it Nesto. And they're like, wait, nasturtium, like the flowers? I'm like, no, the leaves.
Yeah.
And just introducing some small thing to people who are, you know, maybe twice my age,
Right.
and giving them that opportunity, that doorway of like, look what you can do with the stuff that grows right outside your window, you know?
It's so
And yeah, I know, you know, the feeling, because
that's right.
it's magical.
Well,
And
modern American culture and industrial farming has led us away, has sort of strayed us from the path so strongly from so many things, like you said, right outside our window, right outside our door, sometimes in our yard, but definitely like, you know, in the forest down the way or across town. Um, Things that have always taken care of us and always sustained us.
right.
You know? Yeah, I mean, just and to have that experience is. I love that you get to see the light come on in folks who are, you know, who are older than you, because folks from the generations, you know, the generations, a couple of generations before us in mainstream American culture, by and large, haven't really touched a lot of those things. You know, like folks have no idea that there are so many edible flowers with their own characteristics and kind of personalities, and like that are really, you know, most people just look at, you know, like why would I eat a flower petal? You know, and it's like, there's but there's so much here, and you know, and these, or I mean, things like dandelions. You know, everyone knows what a dandelion is. It's a weed. It's a nuisance.
Right.
You know, but to your body, I mean, I know, you know, it's a treasure chest.
It is. So all the parts, all the
All
parts.
the time. Yeah. I have a jar of toasted nettle root right now that I have in the place of coffee sometimes. Because it's got this robust, because it's roasted, it's got this really kind of interesting, robust flavor.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, don't get me started on nettles. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
nettles, it's the same thing, and nettles are such a foundational part. I could take this. I would love to make another version of this and have a nettle leaf there instead of cedar, just because they're both such foundational plant medicines that we work with at Natoncks. But I mean, whether it's like harvesting the nettles at the right time and just getting these sort of like little succulent little young, you know what I mean? Like, they look so good. Blanching. So what I do is I'll harvest those. I take them back to the kitchen. I'll get a large pan, you know, with about 2 or 3 gallons of water, and I'll heat it to about just under 200 degrees, you know, not too close to boiling, but hot enough to be a good blanch. And I take these, you know, and I take these bin after bin after bin. On a good haul, we'll get 7 or 8 bins, and we'll wash, you know, get a little production, and we'll wash the nettles. And we take those and then we blanch them all through the pot. And the rule of thumb with nettles is if it's from the ground to about your calf or your knee, you know what I mean? It's young enough and tender enough, you can make greens with it.
Yep.
You know? If it's from your knee to your hip, it's a little older, and you should probably go ahead and dry that stuff out and make a tea with it. You know, I mean, it's an incredible nutritive tea, full of magnesium, full of so many things, as you know. But I take those greens and I blanch them, and we just go batch after batch after batch. And nettles stain the water really quickly. You know, they darken the water really quickly. And by the time we're done with those 6 or 8 bins, it's opaque black, and it's a little bit viscous. It's so packed with like the goodness of what's in there. And I take, and then I take the greens, I set them aside. I freeze some greens and I make pesto. I love serving elders nettle pesto in like November and December when no one's expecting it. You know what I mean? It's like out of that. But then I take the nectar and we combine that nectar with a couple of things. And I make a honey nettle drink concentrate.
Yes.
You know, so then I can serve that as chilled teas. I can heat it up and serve it over here. And then on the powwow trail, we get to go around the Pacific Northwest in the summertime, and at our booth we offer handmade sodas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So, I've seen them.
So to be able to take those same nettles from that walk in the woods, you know, and to be able to hold them up to people. And oftentimes when we're in Seattle, like if I'm down on the waterfront, I can kind of point across the water to the west and go, we harvest these right over there. You know what I mean? We process them right down there, and here it is for you. You know, and I remember being young, you know, going to ceremony, going to powwow, things like that when I was a kid. And, you know, everybody had a bag of chips and a hot dog and a soda, you know, and a whole bunch of health issues, you know, and, I mean, where I come from, you know, pulmonary edema is this incredibly, you know, common cause of death everywhere. And watching folks suffer from some of those things, a group of us Indigenous chefs, shout out to Olivia Ford, shout out to Sean Peterson, shout out to Jeremy Thunderbird, are grateful and proud to show up in some of these situations and offer things like, now you can come to powwow and instead of getting that Coke or that Pepsi, you can get this nettle soda. And you can go down the way and you can get a plate of, like you can get a bowl with mixed baby lettuces and like a buffalo hash with some wild rice. And like, this is what I'm eating at the powwow today.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And all that salmon. That one year at Daybreak Star, I think you were in charge of the salmon, right?
I was helping. Yeah, well, I wasn't in charge, but I did get to
okay.
help. I did get to help with the salmon. Yeah.
Yeah. That's always my favorite, the salmon bake. Oof.
There's way too many OG uncles around doing that salmon for me to ever say I'm in charge of anything. And that's just fine with me. Maybe someday we'll see. But for now, yeah I get in where I fit in. And that's
maybe
okay.
in 30 years.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, man, you've covered so much. I have so many questions. But I think the most relevant one to what you were just saying about health and food and requests, right? People who have certain, traditions that they want to honor, on their wedding day, but also, maybe you cater at a conference or a convention. We've talked about this before as far as the requests from your clients or your customers, and this delicate dance that you have an opportunity to do when it comes to certain colonial food ingredients. And, specifically, we'll just keep it basic, like cane sugar and maybe refined flour, put that together, you have fry bread. And we talked at length a couple months back about this. Like, you tell us how you approach the conversation, because I know that you are blending and fusing lots of different traditions, and it's impossible to forage everything that you cook. It's impossible to get it firsthand. Sometimes you got to order it from the big store or whatever. That's just the reality of modern day life. So how do you create this balance, and how do you also have these conversations with your clients of like, hey, I don't cook that, or I don't use that ingredient, or do you? Right. Let's talk.
I will. So what I'll say is this is a really interesting conversation, and this is a really interesting subject because I've talked a little bit here about some of the things that are beautiful and special about being an Indigenous chef, like preparing these foods in community. But some of it can be really challenging. And what I mean by that is it has involved a lot of homework. Like, I can tell you things like, I was actually just messaging with a fisherman. Shout out to Rudy up in Tulalip, right before we started this podcast about getting together some fish to go and do an event. So I am a very firm believer in bouncing a dollar around inside the Indigenous community as many times as possible before it goes anywhere else. And to that end, I like to gather things from, say, like Melissa Meyer or like Scotty and Rudy and Big Mike. When it comes to the things that they have to offer, or like asking them about their connections to people for things that they can gather and procure. But the other things I've learned in my travels are like Winco carries this incredible and like super legit wild rice, like this wonderful wild rice. It's domestically grown. There's no funny business about it. You know what I mean? So and it's actually at a very fair price. Sometimes, doing this has involved a lot of homework and a lot of working and learning by trial and error. And there are some things that, unfortunately, it's just sort of like I have to buy some things mainstream. I'm not at a point where I can get absolutely everything from traditional channels. I would if I could, and I like to, but having to be economic. One of the other things about bringing in a handful of folks is making sure that everything is copacetic when it comes time to do payroll, right? So being mindful of that, because the food industry is just the food industry, and the profit margins aren't always necessarily astronomical. Even though we get the privilege of working in a special place with a special niche, working in community, the other side of that is like working for a lot of nonprofits and school systems means that folks are actually on a more limited budget, right? It doesn't mean that the sort of like the sky's the limit. Every now and then you get something like that, and that's great. But for the most part, we have to be really mindful of those things. So with that thought in mind, we try to do our best inside the boundaries that we have. And as far as producing certain foods, you know, fry bread is a tough one, man. And I will tell you that I don't do fry bread very often. If you look at my menus and you look online and you sort of look at the stuff that I offer how do I say this? I'm a real cornbread person. I'm a corn muffins cornbread. It's a blue cornbread.
I've had it. Yep.
It's sumac cornbread. It's cornbread full of fresh corn. Like it's, you know, it's a very corny situation. And I'm about it. Yeah,
You're super corny.
You're gonna be corny as hell. But I really lean into things like that. And lately, and also in my menus, if one was to like observe my menus, I'm very mindful of most of what I serve. In fact, the very vast majority of what I serve doesn't contain dairy, doesn't contain gluten, because they're not really traditional elements of our foods, regardless, you know. On the other side of that coin, I also do know, I should say we know, plenty of aunties, uncles, and grannies out here who are legendary for their fry bread recipe. You know, it is a real thing, and having tasted some of them, they really are like, it's what people do within that world is really incredible, and but it's struggle food. It is, you know, it's you know, I mean, for folks who don't know the full and actual content of that, you know, to be pulled from your traditional land and to be placed on a reserve. Which almost always means you're placed in a place where the physical land, first, it's not your home. Second of all, the land usually sucks. I mean, we'll just call it what it is. You know, it's not great for farming. It's not a great place to hunt. It's not a great place to fish. And that's why you're there, right? It's throwaway land. Yeah. For Indigenous people, because Indigenous people go from being, an exotic mystery to someone in the way, to someone who is hated, to someone who is hunted, to someone who is forgotten about and an afterthought, you know, after they're colonized, after they're absorbed into the boarding school system, or if they're not in a situation due to their age, their location, whatever, that they're brought into that, they're just sort of like pushed to the periphery. And once they're in that place, you know, commodity foods are a thing. You know, right. I mean, I grew up around it too. My you know, shout out to Johnny, Mikey, Joey, Freddie, Billy, and Polly. My, and that's real. That's real.
Wow. I stopped tracking all the shout outs. I was like,
my father's brothers.
World record here. Shout out guy.
I love it. When I was a kid in Worcester, they kept a 50-gallon drum of powdered milk in the kitchen. Because it was 6 boys, right? It was 6 boys between the ages of 10 and 17. 6 boys, right? And so that, I mean, I just remember that 50-gallon drum, you know, and it was urban, but it was commodity. You know, like so that stuff has touched my life too. I do and have made cornbread for fry bread for nostalgic purposes. But of most of the Indigenous caterers I work with, I really try to be intentional about steering clear of it. And we also stay experimenting with, you know, we have been doing, I have one of my chefs, again, shout out Mary Lynn, is super intentional with like experimenting, you know, and sometimes now it's, you know, we're experimenting with like soaking cornmeal in buttermilk and sort of making a dough from that we can cook in a different way as an alternative to fry bread. You know, like pursuing different recipes, like making it with blue cornmeal instead of just making it with flour. You know, like there are some ways to kind of push the needle like that. So I don't get the opportunity to do that every time, but I definitely try to include it in the conversation every time. So my making of things like that is very scaled back. Um, and I do honor people's sort of like nostalgic desire to do those things at times.
Sure.
But I never push things like that. I'm not out front going, "Hey, I'd love to show up and do Indian tacos or do a whole bunch of,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a thing that I have poured my chef's energy into.
Right.
I would much rather, talk about maybe like working with alternate flours. I love
Mm-hmm.
making flatbreads, but my journey again, like my journey through the restaurant world and through, like I met it several years ago, about 13 years ago, I had a food truck that did Turkish, Moroccan, Persian, and Egyptian food, and it wasn't because somebody said, "Hey, go cook this food." It was because as a chef at the time, that particular part of the planet was the most interesting to me because it was like to
Mm.
me, it was this new, these spices and the way that these people solve these ancient problems of like taking this handful of grain and turning it into and turning it into flour and adding some water to it and like putting it on a hot stone and peeling it off. And now I have
Mm.
this flatbread, right? And these spices that are like as much alchemy as they are cooking. Like before you know what I mean? Before I'm sprinkling something over some food, it's been toasted. It's been blended with
Mm-hmm.
something, and it's been, I mean, it's just like when folks started talking to me about like singing over plants when they're harvesting things. I really appreciated that because of like playing with spices in these other cuisines. So I say that to say, playing with things like quick breads and flatbreads in that particular way. There's
Mm-hmm.
also lots and lots of room for that. I was just contacted by a group yesterday that wants to do some really interesting interpretations of foods for this event they have for some youth in August, and they offered me some camas flour, right? I know, like just dry. You see what I'm saying? Like dried and ground camas, and like
Wow.
you just like a bag of flour, and like I can't tell you how over the moon excited I am to play with it and to see
Yeah.
what we can do. You know what I mean? So I say that to say, again, modern American culture has taught us that we have corn and we have flour and we have sugar and like these and yes, those things are foundational for a lot of things, but that's not the whole story. In fact, if we really dial it back and we really look around, we can allow those things to be a smaller and smaller and smaller part of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And replacing things. And as a food first personal trainer, I want my clients to enjoy their health. I say this all the time. I can't say it enough. Like, if you want to be healthy, you also have to be happy while you're getting that experience, while you're in the journey. Like, sure, it's not super easy because our environment is saturated with ultra processed foods,
Mm-hmm.
but if we can find alternatives like what you're offering, Jason, instead of refined cane sugar, we're going to use a little bit of honey. Instead of refined bleached white flour, we're going to use freshly milled corn flour. That's probably nixtamalized, right?
Right.
And so we know that there are ways, but for a lot of folks, they feel very kind of trapped and helpless. Like, it's too expensive to eat healthy, or I don't like healthy food. I have a cousin who hates to drink water. Like, she can't deal with it.
I was with somebody yesterday, same thing. Yeah.
It's real, right? So,
Yeah.
and I can't laugh at anybody who comes to me for help because the struggle is real. Like,
So real.
this struggle is not easy, especially if you don't have a life experience of like you, Jason, being a chef and growing up in restaurants, or me growing up, experimenting with lots of different cuisines, cultural food traditions, having parents that would show me how to cook certain things. And then when I was vegan, I was trying all these other things that nobody taught me. I just had to try it out. And so for me, I had this innate interest in learning how to cook, learning how to forage, but not everybody either has that interest or has the time or the resources. And so uh, I think, just reflecting on what you were saying about alternatives and finding replacements, like I always say, if there's an ultra processed food like chips, crackers, flour, cookies, cakes, even if it's not sweet, right? Like chips are are very common, whether they're tortilla chips or potato chips. But what I'm working on with some clients right now is prioritizing protein and healthy fat and making that a bigger portion on your plate and saving those carbs, if you're going to have them, for last. Because
Wait, are you trying to tell me that the food pyramid is a lie?
which food pyramid?
Exactly. The one they gave me in freaking 5th grade.
Yeah.
And swore it was chapter and verse, right?
Man,
Talk about
that's a whole other episode. Now that
Right.
the food pyramid is basically flipped on its head.
Yeah, that's right.
I am happy about the grains being in the smallest triangle.
Like they belong there. They just don't belong at the big D. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They don't belong
So people are getting a clue as far as the mainstream goes. And it's controversial because you can go to cultures all around the world where they eat grains every day and they're not falling over and dying, all day, every day.
The flour and the pasta in Italy is different. It's different. Folks always say that they travel to Italy and Italians from America travel to Italy and they're like, it's different.
Yeah.
It really is. And they're not wrong.
Right.
They're not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So, where else did I want to go? I have so many questions. You've answered a lot of them without me even asking.
I want to share and say it's really interesting what you shared about. I'm going to share a little bit about this. I'm going to be mindful of how I share it. I have had the experience of being mentored this spring and working and without saying too much about that. It has been a revolutionary sort of like change in how I consume food, much more towards sort of like something like we're talking about. But the things I'll say about it is like consuming less food less often, being intentional with what I'm consuming, working with things like it doesn't always have to be a couple of hard-boiled eggs. It can be walnuts. It can be there are so many ways to consume things if you're mindful and sort of careful about it. But it's also, like there's some reading behind it. There's some journaling behind it. There's some, there's a handful of like these other ways to take care of ourselves around it. So just like you said, it's not just changing what I eat. It's changing like, I will tell you that I was a person who, my friends used to call me 7-Eleven. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, Jason, you get up every day and you leave the house at 7 and you don't come home till 11 o'clock at night. And you're on the go. And as a person who has come back from being unhoused and addicted and incarcerated, for me, I had this thing, I realized in the middle of it that I had this incredible desire to sort of like prove to the world that I was a good person again, or prove to the world that I was valid again, until people looked at me and said, hey man, it's not necessary. Like you have to live, you have to take care of yourself. Like it's affected really like partner relationships. It's affected family relationships, things of that nature. So really honoring the call to start with me and start simple at first. And I'm saying this to you because I know that it'll probably echo some of the principles that you try to share with people. But for me, it starts with like make intentional time for yourself at home. So I have been given some, I have been given some suggestions about things that aren't negotiable, about taking care of myself,
Right.
Spending a couple of hours quiet at home each night, spending intentional time in the morning to sort of start the day, and doing some things like reading, journaling, things of that nature. I mean, I'll show, I do a word search. I do every morning.
I like word searches.
Oh my God. Listen, so much fun. And I always put the date and the time I finished them.
That's so cute.
It's my jam. I really love doing this stuff. So I say that to say like getting up in the morning, kind of lining, like getting myself in line like that. And I promise you, these aren't things that I came up with. I have been well mentored by some really, really incredible people. But doing those things combined with like really being mindful of like what I consume. Like my snack today while I run around is this bowl of cherries, as opposed to, it'll be that and probably a mango. And then I'll have a meal tonight, and I had a little something to start my day. I had some protein and, and stuff to start my day, but just being intentional about that.
Right. I think one of the misguided good intentions that we've gotten from the mainstream medical healthcare system is that we want to eat consistently throughout the day so our blood sugar doesn't tank.
Right.
But when you're telling someone to eat 6 times a day and you're telling them to eat a lot of refined carbohydrates to keep their blood sugar up, what's the end result? Diabetes.
Yeah.
Over time, right?
I've had it so richly explained to me by people. So like, hey, listen, here's why you need to like keep a little something in your system, keep a little something. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know that's.
I mean, it's such a modern day bad assumption that we have to be fueling ourselves all the time. I mean, look at nature, number one, not just humans, all these other animals. No one's eating all day except, I will say, grass, cows. Cows
Right.
are eating all day, but even horses, they're not eating all day. Anyway, I don't want to get into animals. I want to focus on humans. Right. Like back in the day, if we're going to reconnect with our traditions wherever we're from, we spent the majority of the day working our butts off.
That's right.
Right? Whether we're working in the fields or we're hunting or we're prepping or we're foraging or we're processing our food, you know, to dry it or keep it, you know, safe. You know, I guess one of the biggest aha moments I've had is I had to find my own reason to break away from that narrative of like, you got to eat, you know, 4 to 6 times a day, because what I realized is that I wasn't actually that hungry. I was just eating out of habit. And I was also not eating the best stuff. When I was vegan, I ate a lot of tortilla chips and salsa. Now, there could be worse foods, but once I realized that I was kind of addicted to the tortilla chips, I started to cut back on it, and I noticed these cravings that I didn't even realize I had. And so, like you said, becoming more intentional, that takes time, and it takes kind of in this way, a different way of movement, right? Stillness, like sitting with ourselves, asking, am I hungry right now for that? So, let's say donut, or am I thirsty? Am I dehydrated? Do I need some electrolytes? Do I need some lemon water? Yeah. You know, and it's hard when our systems are so built up with all these layers of, I kind of equate it to a strong cell signal or a Wi-Fi signal. Yeah. When there's no trees in the way, boom, like we're right there. We know exactly the answer, exactly what our body's saying we need. But when there's all this junk in the way, it's hard for us to even hear correctly what's going on inside our body, even though our body's telling us, like, it's giving us all these seemingly random symptoms, right? Like fatigue, headache, bloating, you know, joint pain, all these things. But so yeah, I'm on my own journey too of, you know, trying intermittent fasting, not snacking as much, eating larger meals with larger amounts of protein and good fat. And man, the other day I went like 5.5 hours and I didn't even think about food.
That's amazing.
And it has nothing to do with starving myself or trying to lose weight or anything. I just know that when I can go that long without food, that I ate proper food and I was satiated with that food to where like my mind could focus on all the other things.
It's not about denying myself something. It's about practicing some sort of restraint. Again, to quote a person with more experience in this way of being and way of living than me, that has been explained to me, you know. Mm-hmm. And another thing that I, as I hear you talking about these things, I want to add to these things that drive us to eat all the time. There's an emotional element to it too, right? I mean, we live in a world of like big stimulation, big feelings. You know, like I will tell you that like there was, you know, for many, many years I cook in the kitchen and I'd always have NPR on, just because it would be somebody talking. Like NPR was like my nursemaid, you know, whether it was like a show or the newscast or whatever it was. And now we live in an era of podcasts, and we walk around with these all the time, right? So there's always a conversation going in here. So when I quiet down and there's less noise, or if I'm having some sort of a big feeling about something that's happening in my life or happening in my community or happening in the world. This desire for comfort, it just sort of pops up really quickly, and to be able to practice enough presence to move through that without that knee jerk, like, oh my God, look, let me pull into the store and just get some chips. You know what I mean? Like whatever. And I will tell you that if I'm really painting an honest picture about my life and my relationship to food through my life, it's definitely had its ups and downs. And I too, I mean, as a chef, as a person who makes foods, as a person who tries to embrace the philosophy I shared earlier about like intentional cooking, just like you and the incredible work that you do, we're both walking out these lifelong relationships with like healing our approach to food. Mm-hmm. I mean, right now in real time. So, it's interesting. This other element of it can be like, it can be my emotional response to the world. You know what I mean? Sure. How I'm walking out healing from the, like everyone in the world, like the trauma that I have in my life, and and the work that I'm doing to like take care of my heart and take care of myself. Mm-hmm. Being able to turn food from a way to like shut off those feelings into like another part of my toolkit with which I can use to love myself. Oh man, isn't that, I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Yeah. And when somebody first explained that to me, I was like, yeah, that sounds great, but how the hell are you supposed to do something like that? You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to get between me and my snacks. Like, are you trying to get in between me? Like, and I remember thinking about it. It's an easy thing to say yes to at the moment until you have some feelings. And you drive past the 7-Eleven and you know that sucker is full of chips and candy bars and.
Yeah, don't get between me and my feelings, man.
Yeah, don't get between me and my.
Real. That's so real. One of the tools that I use with my clients is a CGM, the continuous glucose monitor, because we're so stopped up with, layers of kind of, I don't want to say junk like junk food. I just mean junk in our systems, in our energetic fields. Yeah. Right. And CGMs really help people understand, especially when I work with them in my program, how your blood sugar is impacted by certain things. And then what happens after? Yeah. Your mood changes. You want to go to sleep, you crash, and then you refill, you re-up, and then you're good, and then you crash again. And so one of the things that I give my clients when I do the CGM program with them is a food mood journal. It's literally called the Food Mood Journal.
Yeah, I like it.
And so you track how you feel before you eat, how you feel after you eat. You match it with your blood sugar readings, which is, an app on your phone. But the CGM just sticks on the back of your arm for 2 weeks, and it tracks 24/7. And it has shocked some of my clients. They couldn't believe that some of the food they were eating were basically associated with their mood swings, with their cravings, with headaches, with, bloating, with all these issues, because in their mind, some of those foods are healthy. Right.
That's the key word, is in their mind. Like our mental connection to what we're doing versus like what's really going on in our bodies is, I mean, for almost anyone in modern America to go from like, I'm just in my life, and if your life is big and busy and loud, when it's kind of like I'm flying through space with a blindfold on, like I'm just moving and moving and moving. And sometimes people crash into a mountaintop, you know what I mean? Like, and what I mean by that is like, I mean, I went to the doctor a year ago and was told that my A1C was in I was about 30 pounds heavier and my, and in the middle of stress, in the middle of trying to hang on to a bunch of things that weren't serving me. And, and again, like in this sort of like, just in a different place on my walk of like healing my relationship to the world, you know what I mean? And some of these things were explained to me and I'm grateful to be in a different place now, but it's not just grateful. It's not just being able to like, put on a shirt that you put away and said to yourself, someday I'll fit this again. It's very satisfying. Don't get me wrong. Sure. I'm grateful for it, but it's also, my mother passed at 51 of heart disease, and her mother passed at 51 of heart disease as well. Wow. And I'm 53 years old now. Right. And in fact, I got to sit with my mother's best friend just a couple of days ago and have a conversation, a really, really beautiful conversation. And things like that were really strong in my mind. And I have a 16-year-old daughter, and if I'm going to embody who I say I am doing this work, there are a lot of parts of the world that I need to be intentional about paying attention to. You know?
I love that you said embody. And
Yeah.
that's a word that I really, really value right now, because a lot of people talk about consciousness and,
Yeah.
you just have to be conscious of this or that, and then things will start to evolve and change. I can know logically, I can know consciously that eating donuts every day does not serve my metabolic health, right?
Right.
But if I don't embody a larger reason and a deeper understanding of like listening to my body and my mind respond to those donuts, then I'm not going to make a change, because the mind always wins, right? The mind wins until we can't function anymore, whether, like you said, it could be an A1C situation or a heart situation. I know a lot of people with asthma who don't understand that food can impact how your lungs function. I mean, there's so many different things. So I love that you said embody, because I replaced consciousness in some of my own work, self-work, right? Journaling and stuff, with that term embody, because when we can feel and sense, we know the body keeps the score. You know that book? Have you heard of that one?
Sure do. Yes.
The body really keeps the score. I mean, we have this constant battle between mind and body. And of course, as a trainer, I'm like, okay, look, your body is not the enemy. Okay. We have to stop treating it as if it's separate from what we want and what our minds are thinking. Our body should be our friend, and really is our friend by default. We just don't really respect it. Right?
Yeah, that's right. We don't really respect it is so true. And again, like the cultural and societal influence, like living in modern America, like, after World War II, corn was a commodity, wheat was a commodity, you know what I mean? Food in a box was a commodity, microwave, just like we, like culturally, like to really pay attention to the fact that like the cultural shifts in this place where we live and their influences on what we put in our body. Like Michael Pollan was right. You know what I mean? Like Michael, those arguments make sense, the business drives, the commodifying of things, means that like, all these the breakfast cereals are fortified with essential nutrients and vitamins and part of a balanced breakfast. And it's like, is it part of a balanced breakfast?
Slap on a CGM and see what it says.
Right. Is it part of a balanced breakfast for me to be like 9 years old and get that old margarine bowl, like the big one, and fill it with cereal, and then pour a bunch of sugar on it, and then pour whole milk on it, and sit down and watch Saturday morning cartoons? I will tell you, I damn sure did that.
I did that.
I promise you I did that.
I did it.
Yeah, thinking about it now is like, ooh, it just, you know what I mean? It's interesting. The things that were considered normal, or I mean, just, just the things, so many of the things that were considered like real fundamental parts of our diet have created this static inside of our bodies, and I'm not saying that in any way towards anyone else. I'm only saying it from experience. You know what I mean? Like, like my inner fat boy be whispering in my ear a lot. You know what I mean? He hasn't gone anywhere, and I'm grateful to be on a journey, and working through those things. And I'm grateful to be able to do that while doing the work that I do, to be able to pay attention to like, what kind of interesting proteins can I use to take care of myself? And then I went to an event the other day and these, at Snoqualmie, and these hunters, brought me an elk neck. They said, this is for you. And it's this, like, I mean, imagine like an ossobuco, but it's like this, it's like the size of my head, and it's like this thick. And it's like, and he was like, yeah, it's going to take it'll take from morning to evening to cook, but by the end of the day, it'll be worth it, and I was like, and there's so much good in that. But I say that to say, for Indigenous people who are interested and curious about it, to lean culturally into what's happening with foods, to like my uncle used to say, feed your Indian, like feed that Indigenous DNA inside of ourselves with something that's traditional, because most of the things that are traditional aren't it's not a bunch of processed flour. It's not these things. It's plant medicine. It's simple grains. It's meats. These things that are, and they're not not touched too much. You know what I mean? Like they're loved on and they're transformed into something that we can eat, but they're not, you know, most things aren't transformed until they're sort of like unrecognizable from what they originally were, you know? Like who knows what goes into this Swanson pot pie? You know what I mean? Like who knows?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I can't see it. I can't see like, yeah, nothing in there's reminding me of a carrot. Nothing in there's, you know, nothing in there's reminding me of an onion.
Exactly. Yeah. I have a friend who won't eat anything with a face on it. So like she won't eat a whole fish. She'll eat a fillet of fish. And I'm like, this woman is in her golden years too. And she has never changed and she will never change. And I get it because, you know, I grew up around hunters, but not my dad, but my uncles and my cousins. And I would go over to their house, you know, for Thanksgiving or whatever, and we'd be playing outside and there would be a deer hanging in their garage.
Right.
And it made me uncomfortable because I wasn't used to seeing that part of my food in front of me before it was on my plate.
That's right.
But I was very curious about it. No one was like, "Hey, I'm going to show you what I shot today" or whatever. But in my little kid head, I was like, "What's going on here?" Yeah, and it wasn't until years later that I was taught, you know, more awareness of like how you capture an animal, how you harvest it, how you store it, how you prepare it and stuff like that, but in a sacred way too.
That's right.
Because when I was vegan, I had my reasons, and I've talked about this on the show before, but I'm actually working on a piece right now, recalling a conversation I had with one of my uncles when I was vegan, and he was super edgy around me because I think he thought I was better than him because I didn't eat meat. And I said to him, "Uncle, do you know why I'm vegan?" He's like, "Well, why?" And I told him it's really about the factory farms that I don't want to support. I don't want to support that disgusting practice of putting animals in feedlots and blah, 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 and like horrible deaths, traumatizing. And he's like, well, I don't eat that stuff either. I mean, I shoot all my own stuff. You know, I got elk, I got deer, and I'm like, yeah. And I respect that. I'm a bad hunter. You know what they say. Vegetarian or vegan just means you're a bad hunter. And I said, "Uncle, I'll try your venison tonight." He's like, "Oh, okay." And I did this whole other analogy story, trying to teach him a lesson. But in the end, I ate some of his meat, and I didn't get sick. I didn't feel gross about it. I felt that connection, right? Yeah. And that's another disconnect we have as humans right now, is we've been told that, you know, eating animals is bad, or we have not been told that when you do harvest animals, that there's a sacred cycle involved in that ideally, right? And when someone else is giving their life for you, you honor that. You know, you don't take that for granted. And it's hard in modern day society when you're hungry and you got to get a steak or a burger at a restaurant, like 9 times, almost 10 times out of 10, we don't know where that came from. We don't know who touched it. We don't know what happened to it.
That's right.
But when I broke my vegan edge, I call it, I realized that I was going to die. I mean, I was anemic. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was like, I'm sorry, universe. You know, I have to listen. My body is yelling at me and I'm missing some really important nutrients. And so I slowly transitioned into eating animal proteins again. But again, we're going back to that. What's your body telling you? What does your body really know? Because your body always knows better than anybody, I think, you know, better than a blood test, better than a doctor looking you up and down. We know. It's just a matter of getting back to that. And I think it's really awesome to hear about your story, how it's continually evolving, right? And you're trying to walk the talk as much as possible and, you know, practicing what you preach. And I think you are very aware of the fact that you're not perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. Nobody has the best answer for everybody. You have to figure out what works for you. And it sounds like your business is constantly like sitting you down. Like, hey, Jason,
It's a
remember what
gift.
you said?
That's right. I will tell you that I sat down with somebody to have a conversation yesterday, and she wrote this incredibly beautiful 2-page piece on what the term feeding my cousins meant to her personally. Like, what a gift.
Wow.
Like, she was, I didn't know her at all. I didn't know her at all when I decided to name my project Natoncks Metsu, or feeding my cousins in my language. But to sit down for this conversation yesterday and hear this gorgeous, piece about what those things mean to her in terms of like reciprocity and communities taking care of each other and not leaving anyone out, and just, just like, and like being mindful of intention. I have been asking for lessons like this lately in what we do with our work, because we have been I'm grateful to say that we've been growing and changing, and there have been a lot of exciting new creative things that we get to do now, and I'm 1,000,000% here for that. But making sure that we grow well is just as important as making sure we grow.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to be who we claim to be, if we're going to be who we desire to be, that's also a slice of the pie that deserves real intention as we walk. It's not just being the world's busiest caterer. It's not just working really hard, doing this and like the late nights. And I mean, yes, sometimes it is those things, and that's fine. That's that we sign up for that. But the other thing that we sign up for is that internal walk that we take while we're doing it.
Right.
So I'm grateful to be here for that. And you're right. So if we're really doing this in a good way, as Indigenous people who are trying to heal from all different kinds of things, and part of the reason I mentioned those things, substance use disorder, being unhoused, being incarcerated, is because those things actually happen to all different kinds of marginalized people in this country in all different kinds of ways. So I think that if anybody gets an opportunity to come back from that in a good way, it's so important to turn around and like shine a light into the world and say, hey, listen, this place where you're at isn't the end of the line. Please keep going. Like, just make it through one more day, because on the other side of it, there's an opportunity to do all these different things, and you have no idea. Like, if there was a time maybe 10 years ago, if you had told me I'd be sitting having a conversation like this with you, and living in a place like this, and being surrounded by like beautiful people and plant medicines and these incredible mentors, I wouldn't have had the capacity to believe you at all. I would have said, yeah, whatever, just leave me alone. But here we are, and it's real. So I say that to say, we all get an opportunity one way or another to be an example to each other, right? Whether it's a cautionary tale or maybe this isn't the end of the line for me. Like, I saw how this guy was, and now he's a different way. Maybe I can do that too.
Right.
So, it's important.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you've been doing this business of chefing and curating lovely things for a number of years, but I would love to know, do you have a 5-year plan? Like, do you have a vision, even if it's not written down? Do you have a vision of where your business might be in 5 years?
I do. And it goes far beyond just my business. There are a couple of things I have been for the last few years. One of the other things I've been doing is, I'll tell you a story about it. In 2009, I lived in Brooklyn. I lived in New York City with some friends. And we were working on putting together some ideas for food. And I was making a sorbet one day. I was making a raspberry rosemary sorbet. And I put a little too much sugar into my mix. And if you have a little bit too much sugar into it, the ice crystals won't form. It won't become a sorbet. It'll, like, you'll spin it all you want. It'll still just become kind of a slushy syrup. So I had this container, and I was like, well, I don't want to throw it away. And I just had it in the fridge, and we were sitting outside, and it was like August in Brooklyn, and it was like sweltering hot. And there's like 4 or 5 of us sitting out on the stoop, and I lived in Crown Heights. And I looked around and I was like, hang on a minute. And I went upstairs and I did it. I laid out a bunch of glasses. I put some ice in them. I put a little tablespoon of the syrup in each one and some club soda. And I went downstairs and we had these with our pinkies out, raspberry, rosemary sodas, right? And so I draw a direct line. You already know we were real fly that day. And I draw a straight line from that to now in as much as one of the things I started doing when I started this project was also recreating some things like that. And when I got this first flush of being able to work with these traditional ingredients and to work with these new things, I started making some drink concentrates. So I have about a dozen drink concentrates now. What I'm working on now is sweetener alternatives. To try to find new and kind of more responsible ways to share those around. And so that's a current really important piece of work we're doing. But, we offer whether it's, I have one called Sailor Style, which is cedar and tangerine. I have one called Lemonade that we made for the Paddle to Lummy in 2019, with rosemary, mint, and lemon, and rosemary and mint are both really important medicines. And we, sweetgrass, apple, blackberry, like things like this. So a lot, like we did that one. We made that one last year for one of the big powwows, and we go up and sneak a couple of freebies to the MC with a little note that says, "Hey, give us a little shout out." And we sold just that flavor until we sold all the way out of it before we went back to selling our other flavors. And then of course we have the honey nettle, like I described, and we have a handful of others. You can find information about it online, which I'm sure we'll talk about. In a minute. But so one of my visions is I have found a couple of interesting Indigenous channels to can and or bottle some of those things, and so I'm really interested in doing that and spreading that around in a good way. It's
So would that be basically on a grocery store shelf? Is that one of the visions?
That's the idea. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Something along those lines. But more importantly, the larger picture is this: if I'm really, and I've thought about this for a long time and done some writing and done some planning around it for many years. If I were given the opportunity to put something in the basket to cast sort of cast its light off to the next 7 generations, I would like very much to. I have a vision about preparing a longhouse specifically devoted to food and the education around food and Indigenous food and culture for a place where it would be normal for urban Native kids and rural Native kids to come to this place. And on Mondays, we put a bunch of picnic tables out and kids get to touch food and play with it and see what, and see what things feel like, make it normal, to touch things. Mm-hmm. And then say the next day we clear the picnic tables out and we put in restaurant tables, 2s and 4s, and we have a cookbook author come in, and sit up at the front of the room like a stand-up comedian, like with a stool and a bottle of water and a microphone, and tell stories from the cookbook. And oh, by the way, while they're telling the stories, we're going to serve you 4 courses from the book, while Sean Sherman is sitting there or Nephi Craig, and they're just kind of like, and they're just kind of like sharing a little bit about themselves, and so on and so forth, right? And to be able to make a normal place to teach young adults coming of age, ways to like take care of their kitchen, and take care of themselves, what it means to like take care of yourself with food. And also in that place to have a space for people to bring like their plants that they harvest and turn them into medicines, whether they need to freeze dry them or dehydrate them or turn them into salves. A place where hunters can bring what they harvest, whether it's fish or game, and have a clean look. And I've seen some things, and like Snoqualmie's got some incredible facilities to help with these things, to help along. They've been an incredible example of how to do some of these things. Last year I went out there and I've been writing about these things for a long time, and I went out to Snoqualmie and I thought, wow, they're really doing it for you, these things, like to normalize that in tribal communities, to me, to get people back in touch with some of these things. But in particular, my heart is with the urban Indigenous folks, because I grew up in the city and I'm still living in the experience of being a reconnecting Native, which means being comfortable, being uncomfortable, being comfortable, being like, I'm a chef. I'm 53 years old. I've been working with food my whole life, to sit in a room full of people who are younger than me. And like, I don't really know anything about what they're talking about. So I need to be quiet and be teachable and ask questions and pay attention. Right. Sure. Instead of going in there like, well, I'm doing this and I'm from this and I'm from that. So to that end, to make that transition something that goes smoothly for urban natives in the future, people who are reconnecting to culture, all of those things. Like to that end, my real dream is to create a space like that looks like a gorgeous longhouse. So one of these days, and I would love to put a whole bunch of young native folks to work doing it. So
yeah.
yeah.
Wow, that is quite a vision. I love that. So how can we support you on that vision?
I am online at natoncksmetsu.com. I would encourage folks to please to follow my Instagram, which is Natoncks_Metsu at IG. And if you're interested, if you go to my page and go to the catering feature and you're interested in working with me, there's plenty of opportunity there. If you're interested in trying or having an experience with our drink concentrates, they're great for cocktails, mocktails, things like this, or just simple sodas. I'm really grateful that we're living in sort of a mocktail moment in the world where folks are like consuming less alcohol, but still want something exciting and interesting and engaging. I'm like, listen, I got something for that. Let's talk.
Yeah.
So those are the ways those are the places where information is available. We have enjoyed we have enjoyed a lot of press this last. We just had a piece in the Cascade Daily News last week. The spring issue of the Seattle Met magazine did a feature on us, which you can find online. If you Google Seattle Met Jason Vickers, these things will pop up. And I'm really honored and grateful for that. And it shows me that this thing that we prayed over, this thing that we were intentional about, this thing that we talked about doing like in community is really working. So,
yeah.
So thank you for the question. Yeah, there are lots of ways to reach out and kind of find out about us.
Cool. Well, I will volunteer myself as you're experimenting with alternatively sweetened syrups and drinks. I will try anything that doesn't have cane sugar in it.
Okay.
I have this weird thing with honey. It makes my face break out.
Oh, wow.
Not like terribly. I'm not allergic, but I get some acne. And so I avoid honey as well. So if you can find, I don't know, you work your magic, I will taste test all of it.
Yeah. Listen, I'm on the case.
Okay, good. So, and the closing question we always ask, and it's kind of a funny question, but we're trying to get, I told you earlier, we're trying to get the phrase metabolic health into the communities, into young people's mouths, into anyone's mouth, so they understand that it's a real thing and it's an important thing for all of us to be happy and healthy. And so metabolic health is just a holistic understanding of the body and the mind. The question is, what is a magical, because we're the magic of metabolic health,
I see you.
What is a magical metabolic tip that you can share with our audience, whether it's your own internal like aha realization that you had at some point in your life, or something you're really conscious of or embodying right now?
My current favorite metabolic experience that I've been gifting myself is every Sunday I fast until 5 p.m.
Nice.
Yeah, I might get up and drink. Listen, I'll get up in the morning and I'll drink a glass of water. I'll put a little teaspoon of sea salt in it. You know what I mean, to kind of activate the body. And then I'll go. And then, but yeah, I hold off until at least 5 p.m. And then I have a meal. And here's why it's an exciting metabolic hack: is because so many folks, we don't give ourselves the experience of like breaking a fast. And it's so special to sit down. It's like you might eat this plate of of chicken and rice or whatever it is for dinner on any given day, and it's like it's great. But to eat it when you're really, really hungry and you taste it, it just all I can say is it hits different. It just really hits different. So yeah, my favorite little metabolic treat is making sacred space, making sacred time on I'm not going to say any given Sunday, but on every Sunday to wait till 5 p.m. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Sundays are good for me too.
Yeah.
When it works for us, it works for us. And
right.
whatever you do, you. right?
That's right. So, and it was suggested to me by somebody, by somebody smarter than me to hold this day and time sacred. And I'm grateful to say that the advice they gave me is beautiful, and the result has been, it's great. I'm rocking with it.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'll go to lunch with you on Sunday, but I'm just gonna have some water. You have your lunch.
Okay, so we have to have dinner on Sunday.
Dinner on Sunday is great. Yeah,
or a late lunch.
Yeah, exactly. You can watch me take a bite and go. Yeah, it's good.
Cool. Okay, well, let's wrap up. We got all your Instagram stuff. We got your website. I'll be sure to put all the links in the show notes. I'll try and get some information about maybe like a quarter of the shout outs you gave. You'll have to email me some of the names if there are people that you actually want to link to social media or the work that they're doing. And so just for closing, we always want to remind the listeners that there is a fabulous and fast resource to better understanding your metabolic health, and that is a continuous glucose monitor. And thankfully, we have been offered a discount code through the company Lingo. That's hellolingo.com. And if you go to the checkout for one CGM device, it's a 2-week device, enter our discount code Metabolic Magic, one word, and you'll get 15% off. So it's a super good deal. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm offering CGM programs to help people walk through that process, because it can be a little intimidating, sticking this device on your arm and all that stuff. But my website, primitivepulsefitness.com. Of course, we're on social media, and we are the magic of metabolic health. So thanks for being here, everybody. Thank you, Jason, for being here and taking the time out of your schedule. And thank you, everyone, for being part of our village. We will see you next time.
We're bringing healthy back. Them other bros don't know about the facts.